And so even to this day, like when we look at content strategy, I'm still very mindful of like the jab, jab, right hook and making sure that you're not, overly just selling to your audience. And are you providing real value to your audience? Where I think like in the comic book industry, if we look at like that's something I think a lot of retailers really should think about, because when you look at a lot of retailers Instagrams, they're very like, here's this item for sale, here's that item for sale. And those, I think the algorithms end up really like working down those, and the more that you can get engagement going by just adding value. Some of the retailers are the most knowledgeable people in this entire industry, and just that knowledge that they share in their store, if they just translate that online, you'll see, I think they'll see their sales engagement posts go up.
Hey, it's Adam at Comic Industry Insiders, the weekly podcast where I get to talk to people behind the scenes of the comic book industry and get to know what it is that they know that you should know for your business or career in comics. On today's episode, we're taking kind of a wide angle look at the shifting culture of collecting, retail, and live selling. Our guest, Jack DeMayo of Whatnot, better known as AKA Mr. Bolo, has built his career by spotting these shifts early, connecting dots across fandoms, and helping platforms and publishers rethink how they reach audiences. Now, this isn't just about the comics industry. It's about the connective tissue between sneakers and trading cards and NASCAR merch and, the comic shop experience itself. Jack brings an operator's eye for retail, a marketer's instinct for community, and a willingness to borrow and steal the best ideas from outside industries and drop them into ours. In this conversation, we dig into what live selling really means for the local comic shop retailer. We talk about how blind bags and trading packs are reshaping the way that comics are presented, and why selling both the micro and the macro matters for the future of comics retail, for the future of our industry. If you're a retailer, a publisher, or just somebody who wants to understand where the next big wave of commerce and community is heading, I think this one is the one you're going to want to pay attention to. Ladies and gentlemen, Jack DeMayo is one of my favorites. I think he will be for you too.
That was a fantastic intro. Probably the best I can ever imagine. I'm hyped to be here. Longtime viewer, first time
Oh,
guest. So
oh,
absolutely honored to be joining some of the greats that have blessed this show.
oh, dude! I remember first becoming aware of you. It really was when you started at Whatnot, and you always just had this kind of this energy that was just so excited, right? I think that there are certain people, especially in our world, who that they are doing this because they know how to make a paycheck here,
Yeah.
right? From you, I always just got this like sort of you're still just a fanboy at heart at everything you touch, and I think that's wonderful that you haven't lost that.
Absolutely. I think like a little bit of it is like the background that you kind of highlighted there in the intro of like, I actually remember uh times where like I worked retail in a mall and I was a part of a machine and I didn't know how I was going to get out of that. So I feel very
Mm-hmm.
blessed to be in the position that I'm in now. And then also there are times just like everybody else where you have bad days at work
Yeah.
and you're feeling like really jaded and upset, and it's important to take stock of like, man, how blessed are we that we live in this world of superheroes and fictional stories, and
Yeah.
we get to commerce with the thing that made us excited as kids like that. I just constantly feel blessed that I get to do that every day.
It's crazy, right? It's crazy that we live in a reality where we can really create careers that raise families and allow us to, apply our serious adult brains to problems that really come from the things that we loved as kids. I think I don't know. I just love this particular timeline that we're on for at least that much.
Wholeheartedly. And if you can't get excited about that every morning, then like you got to check yourself.
Right, exactly. um, so I wanted to cover a couple things. And you listen, normally I try and start these off with some sort of story or kind of something fun to kind of get the gas out of the pipes. But for you, and I'm going back to one of my biggest regrets. I don't live with a whole lot of regrets, but I had Sean Big Clutch Kirkham on the show,
My
and I
guy.
did not ask him why Big Clutch. I never asked him where that name came from. So even though I know it's one of those real basic questions we're going to get out of the way, tell me why, AKA Mr. Bolo.
Okay, yeah, I love that. I think like when I was kind of early getting into comics, I was in like the retail world, selling sneakers, multi-store management, that kind of thing. And I knew that like I didn't have the passion for it, and I wanted to get into comics. And I started looking at like, well, I have no idea how to transition into this wild world of the comic book industry. So I kind of like started poking my head in through back in the day. It was very message board based.
Oh yeah,
The CBSI message boards, the CGC message boards, Google Plus, all of that was kind of like 2014. That was kind of like how everybody was communicating and kind of like activating as a member of the community. And so I started posting content, and I realized I kind of had a knack for like the speculative, more this is where the industry is going, this is where the momentum is going kind of content. And but you know, a lot of people were doing that at the time. And then as that world kind of transitioned from there into YouTube, and I was working in YouTube with Simpleman's Comics, and I there was a piece of content I was putting out weekly called it was my originally called my comic buy list, like a terrible, you know, name. There was really no marketing there. And I started to realize I wanted to brand myself to stand out, like this was what I was trying to give my viewer, was like, here's a look into my brain as I'm thinking about what comics I'm buying and selling.
yeah,
And you know, it's not it's a low pressure thing, but here's what I'm looking out for. So Mr. Bolo stood for be on the lookout. It's kind of like police nomenclature for like when, you know, they're letting all other officers know that there's, you know, a suspect to be on the lookout for. And
yeah.
it's very popular in the fashion world. So in the fashion world, you'll hear one content creator say to another, you know, I'm putting a bolo out on this pair of jeans or this sneaker, letting everybody know to
Gotcha.
be on the lookout for this. And it was so commonplace in fashion, and I had never heard it in our world. And so I was like, oh, so much of my career has been, I'm gonna take this thing that works over here, that is like tried and true and resonates with a community, and I'm just gonna bring it into our community here and see. And sure enough, like comics takes to things just like you see in these other worlds.
Sure.
So I was like, I knew it was a little bit pro wrestling, a little bit narcissistic to be like, I'm gonna give myself a nickname, and then like once you do it, you have to stick with it.
Yeah.
But it actually really worked. I think to this day, I see people at Comic Cons. More people will know me as Bolo than will know me as Jack, for sure.
Listen, as somebody who spelled his name ATOM exclamation point for
That's right. You know.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's but you do have to commit to the bit. And
Mhm.
and people are always saying, "Well, which is it?" And I know for me it's always whatever you want it to be. Honestly, at this point I don't care if you know me by the spelling my mom gave me or if you know me by the spelling that the internet gave me. I'm okay with that.
That's right.
So I have to believe you. You can still carry. You're still on the lookout. What are you on the lookout for these days?
Yeah, I mean, now it's you know, it's so different. I think originally I was so focused on the micro and looking at, you know, individual titles, individual characters, individual creators who might be popping. Still create a little bit on the creator side, but now it's much more about like macro trends. So
Yeah.
what are you seeing over the overall of the industry? What are you seeing in other industries that we think is going to start bleeding into ours, and how can you get ahead of that and be kind of proactive there? That's where like you see blind boxes and toys, and how that's, I think there's some trickle down impact into what we're seeing with blind bags and comics. And so looking at things like that, that's much more what I'm paying attention to. So I think when I go to like a Comic Con, I think my way of kind of like transacting in that crowd and that chaos is a little different, because I'm very much like eagle-eyed, spotting what are people doing more than what I'm doing. What are other people doing? What are they buying? What are they excited about? What is everyone talking about? I think that's where I come out of San Diego Comic Con, New York Comic Con every year, just reinvigorated about the next 6 months or 12 months, and some of these buying patterns and what get people excited. Um, And a lot of times you can get ahead of the game and kind of really solidify yourself, whether at a retail level, publisher level, or in my case, at a platform level, by really paying attention and listening.
Yeah, so much of what you said resonates to me, and it is strange as you get to a place where you can see the whole board, beginning to see how things are starting to sculpt in one direction or another. I think is one of the joys of it, right? Is because you understand the micro so well, the macro starts to reveal itself to you, right?
Really.
And hopefully we're helping people see some of that through through our content.
I absolutely think so. I think there's when I was doing content, I think this is the type of show I aspired to get
Oh
to and do. I think like there's a lot of people who give their opinions on the hot book of the week. That's great.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
There's a place for that. But I think like for myself, I wanted to do more when I was doing content. I was like, I want to do more in this industry, but I didn't know how, and I didn't know how to learn. And I always look at your show and go, man, I wish this existed, 8 years ago when I was first getting into this thing. I think it's just a wealth of knowledge.
All of this is reminding me of somebody, and we haven't even really touched the questions I have for you yet, which is great because we're just going from one thing to the next. All of this and your hat are reminding me of somebody I think who is a mutual friend of ours, a man named Gary Vaynerchuk. He and his partners are doing this book called V Friends, which they are shipping out. Oh, look at that in the blind bag. Look at that. Um, so they've been doing this direct to consumer for a little while, and I've been working with us to bring them to the direct market and kind of broader places. So I'm fascinated by that company, but I've always been fascinated by Gary's work. I mean, you'll probably, if your resolution on your screen is high enough, you probably see a couple of his books back here. Um, I love the way pieces of what you're saying resonate as like some of the things that he's always talking about, the micro and the macro, and also seeing those kinds of trends. Can you talk just a minute about who Gary Vaynerchuk is and why he is important to people like us who are doing this work?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like for me, I think it like a lot of us that kind of found him, um there's like almost a personal element that comes to it, because like so Gary is a marketer at his core, runs Vayner Media, large scale creative agency working with some of the biggest brands in the world. So as a marketer, he's an absolute goat and legend. A scrappy guy who came up in his family business, didn't launch into his 30s. Certainly an inspiration for a lot of people, but he's wanted to kind of take his journey and use it as that inspiration fuel and kind of share that process with everybody, and not just at a high level but also at a very tactical, like ground level approach. And I happened to stumble across Gary Vaynerchuk, I don't know, around that 2014 time, maybe accidentally, like a lot of us
Yeah,
did, like right in my timeline. And there's a natural aversion that we all have to like the business guru bro type.
yeah,
And so you kind of naturally want to reject that. But Gary is able to penetrate through that because there is a genuine nature to his content. So I've got his books right here next to me. And when I was trying to shift my career, and the only thing I really had was I had found in my, like mothers do. My mother gave me back some stuff from my house from childhood. Basically, like, get this out of my house.
please get this out of here. I've got a
Yeah,
box of that. I don't want it either, but like I can't throw it away. Yeah,
exactly.
I'm with you.
And so I get this LA Gear box, which will date me. I get this LA Gear shoebox, and I open it up, and there's some comics in it, and there's this spec list that I had made when I was like 10 years old.
Oh my
Uh,
god.
Some I was way off. Max number one didn't necessarily become what we all thought it would become.
Yeah.
Um, but like there were some great picks on there. So like I was, early on some MCU stuff, and I was like, that's actually what really reinvigorated me and made me go, I need to get back into comics. Like if I was right when I was
Yeah.
10, what can
Yeah.
I do as an adult? Um,
What if I'd stuck with it when I was 10? That kind of shit gets me all day. What if
oh
I
yeah,
just stayed with it when I had an idea for a comics industry news show in 2011? What if I had
right.
stayed with it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the things you'd have found up and coming me, for sure.
Yeah.
And so I didn't find the content that specifically was speaking to me in comics, but I found Gary.
Yeah.
And Gary was very tactical. And I applied Gary's so much of like what was Gary's mantra directly. So he talked about like not being afraid to work for free. So I
Yeah.
remember like being at New York Comic Con, I started writing for the like blog website comicbookinvest.com that I had been posting. I started writing for them for free. And so first time I met you was actually at New York Comic Con. You were running Valiant panels. And I went
Yeah.
to New York Comic Con as a content creator and interviewed Dinesh and you for CBSI. And
Really?
I have some videos on a very old YouTube channel of you leading a Valiant panel talking about Bloodshot, myself, my father in the
Oh
panel
my
room collecting content.
God.
Very early days that I would be embarrassed for people to see.
Have a tradition at Valiant that began with Jim Shooter. He actually started it way back in the 90s with something called the Gold Book, which is we take the regular edition and put an A cover on it. You don't have to like blink if you get up. You can stand up. So we take the cover and then we change the logo to gold version. You cannot buy these anywhere. You can only earn them. So you can earn them by wearing one of our shirts to a show, or cosplaying, or tattooing my face, for instance, on your body somewhere. I think that would be awesome. Yes, all the gold books if you do that. But you also give you that one if you come to a panel. So if you come to the booth, you use the secret password. It's a secret password, so you're not going to yell it. You're going to use a very low voice and whisper.
But yeah, so like I was like, okay, whatever I have to do, like if I've got to travel, if I've got to be where the community is, I'm gonna be there.
Yeah.
I was humbled enough to say, no matter what career success I've had in other fields, like I'm willing to start at the bottom here and just get my foot in the door. And I wanted to take the lessons that like Gary had talked about showing value and just be like, hey, this is the value that I can bring. And
100%.
here's what I can do. I can give value to a website by writing for you. I can give value to Valiant because they had been getting some bad press at the time from that site. And I was like, I can give a very objective view
Yeah.
because I'm a fan first, more than anything. And so, I wrote a pretty like glowing Valiant rebuttal at the time about my experience with gold variant covers and how cool the panel giveaways were.
Yeah.
Like I really remember that being like a real crux of it.
Because it was one of those big lessons that I think we did at Valiant, and I think I have to give this all up to Dinesh because this was his idea, was that we would do a gold version of every number one, and we would never sell them. It was never an incentive. It was only ever given out to fans who went above and beyond, or fans who like showed up at the panels, because you wanted to incentivize people to show up at your panel. And even then it was not like they just go to the panel and pick up the book. It was they go to the panel, we give them a code word at the panel that they have to take back to the booth, so they had to see the booth, and then that's how they got the gold book. So I'm always been proud of that particular one, and we've used pieces of it for other clients and other projects.
No, it's a tried and true method. I still believe in it, and it got me. And then also as like at the time like a reseller,
Oh yeah.
I was able to like fund a portion of my trip because of the gold
You're
variants that I
welcome.
picked up.
Yeah.
So that was like, that was fantastic. And it would have been even better if you had live shopping then, because you could have transacted that quicker. Back then, you're dealing with static listings and waiting.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was fantastic. And then similar to that experience for me, it was there's like the 99 cent strategy of like are you humble enough to send 99 DMs to people that you want to do work for,
Yeah.
knowing you're going to get rejected by 98. So many of the people I work with now, in the capacity that I work with now, they know that they were some of the 9 people that I DM'd and asked for opportunities. But it didn't bother me, because the reality of the situation is, while I got a lot of, left on reds and a lot of no answers, I got a lot of people who maybe didn't have an opportunity for me, but it was their first introduction to me. And it made it so that later on down the road, when we ended up getting an opportunity to work together, they were like, okay, I know who this is. And I know this is somebody who is like interested and aggressive and is going to go for theirs. But opportunities did open up, and uniquely, the opportunity that opened up for me the biggest and that kind of like began the ball rolling down the hill, like, the Indiana Jones scene for me, was actually Gary's own videographer at the time, who was quite famous with the Gary Vaynerchuk community, D-Rock.
Yeah.
um, I had actually commented on a thread. He had a thread on Instagram that was like, what do you want to do in the and, just very generalized, like a real engagement post. And
Yeah.
I said, I want to write comics content for Gary V's 1:37 p.m. Um, and so he immediately DM'd me and said, what if I could make that happen? Connected me with Ty on Gary's team. And within 2 weeks, I was the very first comics writer for 1:37 p.m. And it was a paid gig, and
Whoa.
would have never happened if I didn't ask. And at the same time, I'm doing YouTube content. By doing that, it ended up giving me like the leverage to be able to then get publishing opportunities and consulting gigs. And a lot of that really momentum started because I was given that opportunity directly by D-Rock, but it came by doing something that like Gary was very adamant about.
Yeah.
And so even to this day, like when we look at content strategy, I'm still very mindful of like the jab, jab, right hook, and
Yeah.
making sure that you're not, overly just selling to your audience. And are you providing real value to your audience? Where I think like in the comic book industry, if we look at like, that's something I think a lot of retailers really should think about, because when you look at a
Agreed.
lot of retailers Instagrams, they're very like, here's this item for sale, here's that item for sale. And those, I think the algorithms end up really like working down those, and the more that you can get engagement going by just adding value. Some of the retailers are the most knowledgeable people in this entire industry, and just
100%.
that knowledge that they share in their store, if they just translate that online, you'll see, I think they'll see their sales engagement posts go up.
Even sales posts, like even sales knowledge beyond that, right? Most, I will say, a huge portion of people who go into comic shops every week go into comic shops for the culture of being there, right?
Yes.
The culture of being with these people. They want to connect with these people. Giving them that connection on a day-to-day basis is, I mean, it's the same reason that we open social media to begin with. We want to connect with people. So if you're giving them that connection, they are once again reinforcing that connection to you. I want to stress that enough. Like if you're a retailer, you should be using social to be selling, but you should also be using it to connect.
Yeah, and I think like I say it all the time. Like I know a lot of people talk a lot in the industry lately about things like influencers. I think the greatest influencer in the comic industry is the retailer. When you
100%.
when you walk into your shop, if in your local area, that is the person. When I got back into comics in 2014, I walked in like a lost child and was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I had to rely on, luckily I'm walking into Heroes Aren't Hard to Find with Sheldon Drum. It does not get better than that.
Oh,
And
Sheldon. He is a
yes,
legend. He's a
yes.
legend.
So I'm walking in like, help me. And
Yeah.
you have a staff that couldn't be more excited to be like, yes, let me tell you what's going on with New 52 and the relaunch. And these are the titles you should be excited about. And here's what's going on in the indie world. And, I think like that cannot be underestimated at the retail level. Is like, I don't care how many content creators exist. Like you build a rapport in with your customer base that
Yes.
is the most relied upon by a consumer that exists.
Oh yeah.
So just if you can put more of that out there so that people outside of your community can see it, I think it's only going to grow your business.
Hard agree. I do hope that that is heard and reinforced, because comic shops have been such a positive experience in our life. And I finally wrote a post that I've been like thinking about for a while last night, where we announced something, but I did it by saying, look, there are two things that we believe. One is that comic shops are a valuable resource that deserves to be protected, right? Because they are that place of connection. They are that place of, commerce, yes, that we need in order to keep this industry going. But beyond that, like for these people in these communities, it is one of the most important addresses in their life, you know?
Yes.
And the second is that the only barrier of entry for the books that we're making should be the quality of the content itself, right?
I saw
Those are
you.
the two things.
I saw you post that, and I thought that was fantastic. Like that's it.
Thank you.
If it's the quality is the only barrier.
It should be. It really should be. If we can remove the barriers, and don't get me wrong, many of those barriers are not cheap right now, but they
Right.
should be. We should be able to get a quality product on shelves. There's really no question in my mind. That wonderful. I don't want to stop you from effusing about Gary. If you had any more,
Yeah.
please.
No. I just it's I think like so it's full circle now to where you and I both have the pleasure now to work directly with Gary and the teams over at V Friends and the exciting things they're building. For me, it's been like an absolute blessing coming from being like a younger kid trying to like get to a spot, and like a lot of people think the things that these people talk about, it's just talk, but I really applied it and it really paid off for me. So I had the pleasure of being able to like tell Gary and the staff that directly of like, so the messaging that he's trying to get out there for V Friends and as like a father, I'm like, that's fantastic. We need
Yeah.
more positive all ages messages from people who are genuinely trying to add to the community and not take from it.
Amen. This hopefully anybody listening to this episode who has come to me and said, "Why are you working for this guy?" This is why, right here, right? I will tell you, I had a similar moment with that team recently where I said to them, "I just this week, our business just went into overdrive. Like we have really more clients than we need, and we're now having to figure out how we can work with as many people as possible. We're trying to figure out how we can hire to take care of those clients. All of it came from this. It came from giving it away. It came from that jab, right? It just came from just give, and then remind people that you also need support, right? Those just that simple pattern of giving first was, it was something I should have embraced long before. Really should have. And then I think it was really came from Gary and his team and their content they're creating. Cannot speak highly enough. All right.
I can only imagine though how clients are watching the show and listening to the podcast and going, "Oh man, I need to tap into that more."
It's been a really wonderful experience. I mean, and you would think it's counterintuitive. You would think that if you just give it away, nobody wants to pay for it. But they want to work with you. They want to hear you to hear their problems and give the unique spin on it from the experience that we're building here. They want you to like the systems that we're building from seeing the whole board, right? They want to have access to those systems. All of it really comes out of these conversations. The conversation is what makes the value. It's incredible. I cannot highly enough. If you have your own business, you should be doing some version, whatever this version is for you. Because Jack's was different than mine, and mine is going to be different from yours. So, please get involved in that. Okay, great. There's so much I want to talk about. We're already 40 minutes in, which means by the algorithm, half the people have already dropped. So I'm a little bit want to talk through this, but I want to talk a lot about live selling and what its place is for retailers. I really want to get into some of the things like blind bags and how those things are affecting how we think about presentation of the product as opposed to just selling the product. I want to hit those two things, but before we do, I don't want to lose this opportunity to get a bit more of Jack DeMayo because you've given us quite a bit already. So you said you grew up with Sheldon Drum as your retailer. I'm assuming that means that we're talking about Georgia, right?
South Carolina. So I'm just over the border into South Carolina in Fort Mills, South Carolina. Sheldon's in Charlotte, North Carolina. We also had Dave Hinson and Dave Comics for years in Fort Mill, legendary retailer in the area. That shop's unfortunately now closed. Dave's retired, but still doing the convention scene as most of us in comics never actually retire.
No. There's, retire. I always say that retirement for comics retailers is one garage, one truck that you take to cons, and one eBay account. That's it. Right. That's retirement.
Right. That's right. And if I can slip in one whatnot account in the future, then we're there.
In the future, we'll get there now.
We'll get there.
And we do want to talk about that. So you came up as I want to say, but let's talk about NASCAR because this is a rare thing I never see. NASCAR trackside sales. Is that what you were doing?
Yeah, I think everything I've done has like informed where I'm at now, where
Yeah.
I learned so much. And I think in my early like 20s and 30s, I felt like my career was a little disjointed because I felt like, if you look at my CV, I jumped around a little bit. But what I've learned now is like that's the benefit is I learned so much. So when I got out of college, I was working as a manager of a sports card shop. I knew I wanted to be in collectibles. I was still in this phase of like listening to I love my parents, but they were very much like, that is not a real job. Comics and sports cards is not a job that you can do. You went to college. What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
But I very much wanted to make it a path. But the sports card industry died in the early 2000s. It's not
Right.
in the health that it is right now.
Right.
And we as a shop were looking for a pivot. And at the time, NASCAR was exploding. I was born in Connecticut, grew up early years in Connecticut. But I had become a South Carolina transporter at 13 years old. Had really like always kind of had that ability to spot like trends similar to what I was able to do in comics, and I saw the explosion that was happening in NASCAR and on the merchandising side. But nobody was doing merchandising in NASCAR the way you would in other fields, the way you would in sports cards, the way you would in comic books. So I saw a glaring opportunity, and so I spun up the area of our business that was the retail shop is called Rudy's Upper Deck in West Columbia, South Carolina, by where I went to college at the University of South Carolina. And we spun up a NASCAR trackside business. I spent literally 2 years going to every NASCAR track in the country, setting up exactly what we do at cons, setting
Right.
up an outdoor tent booth,
Yeah.
displaying merchandise, both soft goods, t-shirts, hats, and like collectibles. The main collectible in the NASCAR world is 1 in 24 scale metal die cast. Special paint schemes on these race cars are your variant covers. Very similar. I didn't realize how much this would really inform my path. But it really taught me a lot about a pivot, because
Yeah.
we had to pivot. There was no choice. Like the sports card business was hurting, and we had to pivot. And it wasn't necessarily something that was native to anybody on our team, but we saw an opportunity. We saw a very engaged community. I learned at that point, like, you don't judge fandom. People are fans of everything under the sun. I may have had preconceived notions about NASCAR going in. I ended up loving it and becoming now a huge fan. And it was, I think it's what helped me as I then later on got into comics. I've had to make a few pivots in my comics industry time. And then also the respective fandoms. It's why I can understand that, at a time when I was doing content creation, like, there's a market for My Little Pony. There's an
Yeah.
entire engaged community that loves that. And nobody is servicing that community because it's not the cool thing for a lot of like retailers, or not the cool thing for a lot of definitely content creators. Retailers were happy to go ahead and bring that business into their shops when that was really hitting. But yeah, I think it's informed a lot of my positioning. So, a couple of years on the road, something you could only do when you're young. Um, but definitely informed a lot. And it's even now, as I'm like, so much a function of my job is planning our like in-person IRL activations and how do we show up at conventions in a major way. I'm still doing a lot of like the carny stuff that I learned on the NASCAR scene, traveling track to track.
What do you tell the new staffer when they? Because I have my list of things I'm telling somebody if they're working a convention booth for the first time. What are your big? What are your big? Hey, you need to learn this. You need to learn this. You need to learn this very quickly. This is going to be your life, right? What are those things for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's like the obvious that everybody talk about, like have comfortable shoes. Like, it
Yeah.
sounds so stupid, but I cannot tell you how many, especially in the corporate world, when you're a little bit outside of comics, how many people are going to show up in like a Chuck Taylor or something that is like very much, you're halfway through the day, you're going to be dying. We've had women show up in heels and things like
Oh,
that. Like,
oh no.
you are going to be miserable. Like, that comfortable shoe is the key. Comfortable clothing. It is going to be madness understanding that, like helping people understand, because not everybody is a crowd person.
Yeah.
When you're in these big places, it is going to be people coming at you, all left and right. And then for people that are there kind of like on a biz dev, it's like scheduling your time.
Yes.
Those days disappear so fast. And I think
Yeah.
in the early years of going, I wanted to try to like be as fast and free with my time as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I quickly realized that like there's always going to be more people you need to want to talk to than you have time. I feel I walked out of San Diego and felt like I'd kind of failed because I'd missed so many different people that I wanted to get to, but it's just
Always.
that list just grows.
Yeah.
So being as organized with your time. So we spend a lot of time. I spend a lot of time with new employees who are coming into this. It's like get that ready in the run up to the
Yeah.
event. Is know exactly what you're doing with your time and how you know whether it's talking to partners, whether it's investigating new trends, whether it's taking those client meetings and dinners and wherever. Make sure that you've got that really scheduled out. And then spend some time. I tell everybody to spend some time on the macro, like we talked about, kind of on the opening. Is like take a minute to like really read the room, because what is happening on the floor is going to be we work in like a copycat business very much, where if somebody sees something working, it's going to start to spread. So when you
Quickly.
see somebody doing something really well, it's really important to make a note of it and action on it quickly, because you're going to start to see that spread.
Yeah, no, I resonate so much with so much of what you're saying. And I to yes and your work in a booth, get rid of your chairs. Chairs are the
Yeah,
enemy. Stand
the
up,
worst.
be eye to eye with people. You're never going to lose energy if you're standing,
Yep,
right? You're going to, don't get me wrong, you're going to get tired. You're going to get really fucking tired.
absolutely.
But, you're going to be able to engage with people when you're standing and you're on your toes. I also resonate with, dude, the hardest part about shows now for me is just the run up, because by the
Yes.
time I get there, the schedule is already determined. I might as well, I'm just a robot running through my schedule at that point, right? But you have to, and if you don't get that right, you're right. You just bounce around and you never really accomplish anything. Love all of that. Love all of that. So, okay. So then you're working through that. You're bouncing around to all the NASCAR tracks in the world. At some point, you decide to step off of that racetrack. At some point, you decide to start working online. Is that because of the NASCAR stuff? How does that work for you?
Yeah, so with the NASCAR business, I was doing that. I was, running around on the road. I had, like a lot of us now, you hit that point in your life. Now I've got a girlfriend that I really like and I want to
Yeah,
do something more with. That lifestyle is not the most conducive to like then going and trying to start a family.
it was
Um,
not.
I got I got recruited into, because I was doing retail, it was a little unconventional retail. I was recruited by Foot Locker Incorporated at the time to come in a management role and take over a store, and like it was a unique opportunity at that point. I needed to like get off the road and kind of settle down, and I was like, all right, this is a big company, and I love sneakers.
Yeah,
And so much of at that point, sneakers were really exploding. There was a real collectible element within sneakers that kind of related to so much of what I was already interested in. So I kind of got into that world. I worked for Foot Locker for a few years, and then Downtown Locker Room, a Baltimore-based, little hipper of a sneaker company, kind of came into our area. Made the transition over there. That brought me into like an expanded world beyond just sneakers, into fashion. Got involved on like the buying side and like learning the industry from like the manufacturer level and things like that. But we had our first kid, and like a lot of us, when you have your first child, there's, I think, especially for men, there becomes this like reflection point of like, all right, where's this going? What am I doing?
yeah,
I tell this story all the time, and it sounds like a straight up made up story, but it could not be more real. I remember the day that I was like, I need to do something different. I was opening up. We had a Kevin Durant sneaker release, and I'm opening up our store at like 7 in the morning, and there is about a mid 50s gentleman across the hallway who is opening up a Paxton store.
mm-hmm.
Um, and I see him doing this, and I really kind of like feel like I have this glimpse into my future of like, I don't want to be in my
Yeah,
50s at the mall early in the morning still doing the same thing I did in my 20s. And is that the path that I'm on here? Because I just don't know what like upward mobility looks like. I feel like I have
yeah,
so much more to give. And there's this, it isn't conducive. How do you do that? So it started racking my brain when we had our first child of like, if you're going to take a risk, you have very limited window once you have children to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so I took a risk. God bless my now wife for like really having faith to be like, okay, you're going to figure this out. I worked in an Amazon warehouse part-time to try to like make the ends meet while I was pursuing content and internet commerce. I did, and to make this journey, like I tried everything. Like first I thought I wanted to open up a comic retail shop. God bless you retailers.
Oh,
That the grind up to getting like the funds to be able to even open up a shop. I was like, all right, well I have inventory. I'll get on the road and I'll do cons. The weekend warrior con thing, I have so much respect for the people who do that, and I have so much wonderment when I look at the Sheldon Drums and Dave Vincents who I mentioned earlier, like at their age to still be doing it.
yeah.
Because I was in my early 30s and was quickly like, oh, I'm gonna burn myself out very fast. I can see this.
This is
Uh,
hard. This is
yeah,
real
like
hard.
just from a manual labor standpoint of like
Yeah.
the work that goes into pricing inventory before a show. The feeling you have when you put a bunch of expense out, travel a long distance, do a show, and it doesn't go well.
Yeah.
When you come up negative
Oh,
is dejecting.
uh,
That drive back. So I was like, okay, I knew that I wanted to do this, but I knew that I wanted to do it from a different aspect. And I saw a lot of holes and like a lot of cocky young people. I was like, I think I have a voice. I have
yeah.
something to say. And I feel like I've learned things, trackside sales at NASCAR, high end sneaker drops, the sports card industry. I feel like I've learned some things. I also worked at a hip hop record store in college, where we did like autograph signings with Ludacris and Ti, and
Yeah.
so like I've been informed by all of these different cultures and communities, but they all are similar where they're like very tight knit niche communities.
Yeah.
And I want to bring that into comics, and I feel like I have a voice to do that, but I just don't know how to go about doing it. And so it started with I'm going to make content. I'm going to put it out there for free. At the same time, I was always very transparent of like, yeah, I sell books on eBay, and and I set up at conventions, and I'm definitely not one of these content creators who's like decoupled from the sales side. But I'm very transparent about like this is where I'm into. I would tell my community and my buyers what I was buying and where I was putting my money. We launched content that was not just like the Be on the Lookout new comic book day show, but also like it was taboo at the time to talk about FOC. Speculators viewed it as taboo because they didn't want the public knowledge of when those FOC dates were out there, so that they wanted the dates to run out, so that and it used to be the commonplace practice was
Yeah.
it was never talk about a book till the FOC date is over. And then once it's over, you talk about how you think this book is going to be great. And that's what content creators would do. But that doesn't help retailers. That doesn't help publishers. So my partner, Brian Wood, and I, we created an FOC show. And now that you see that has become like a standard in the community. But that's what started to ingratiate me with publishers, where publishers were like, okay, I'm seeing what you're trying to add something that
Yeah.
then helps us. So it opened up a lot of pathways to communication with, at the time, like Ross Ritchie and Philip Sablik over at
Oh yeah.
Boom, and then Arun Singh, and then when he transitioned over to Skybound,
Yeah.
that led to me working with Skybound. Opportunities opened up largely by what I was doing right here on YouTube.
Yeah. Ah, that's wonderful. There you go. There's that Vaynerchuk jab right hook right there
That's
in
right.
action. That's awesome. And so at some point, this you're I mean, when I look at what you're doing during this like kind of digital content, it's all over. It's the YouTube channel. You had a podcast for Beckett
Yep.
Media. You were talk about Simple Man, that because I feel like that really was, as you said, kind of crucial to your sort of evolution.
Yeah, so like Brian Wood, Simpleman's Comics, he already had the channel up and running, existing. I was doing content for CBSI. Brian was a regular CBSI content contributor, and we were really looking, like I think a lot of people have realized in media, like we were looking at our print articles that were successful and starting to have dwindling numbers, and we were like, I think we need to take these digital. how do we take the existing content that these writers are putting together that's fantastic and present it digitally in a way that people actually now are trying to consume content. So since Brian already had the channel up and running and was, very adept at editing and all of the jazz that you need to put into the production side, which was not my experience. I can talk my shit on a mic all day, but that was what I brought to the table versus him. And so we teamed up, and we think we had instant chemistry. Uh, it felt like I was just talking to my buddy every night about comics, but it was also just trying to give. We'd have a he's a very true, tried and true collector.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of commerce with Brian, and with me, it's like all commerce.
Yeah.
And so I love it though, but it's still very, everything is tied to the financial aspect because that's what I enjoy of it. It's not because like it's like a greed thing. It's like that's the part of it that gets me the most excited. It's always the part that connected me to the fandom. So we were able to have these two different viewpoints and really kind of come with a very balanced approach. Now that wasn't too in your face in one direction. We'd argue a little bit in like that fun way that brothers do. And I think we ended up finding an audience. So he had the channel for a few years, and they had a few thousand subscribers, but we saw a real rocket ship up to about 25,000 subscribers at our height. Um, and I think we really resonated with an audience that wasn't being serviced at the time. There wasn't, we were really trying to be like I said, additive to retailers. We were having a lot. I think feedback still to this day on my job is so important. It's like talking to retailers, like, what do you need out of content creators? What are content creators not providing that would actually aid your weekly sales?
Yeah.
And like talking about the books the day they come out wasn't helpful, but that's what everybody was doing. And it was like, okay, so how can we get ahead of this and begin this process earlier and start talking about FOC before FOC? So we're giving people time to like really understand what these books are. And then how can we talk to the publishers so that we're actually getting as much information as possible? Like obviously nobody wants to spoil things, but how can we get as much information out there as physically possible and build those publisher relationships? And so we did that, and we started with building out content. We wanted to kind of be the sports center of comics. I guess is like really like I wanted you to be able to tap into our content every day and get like a level view of what's going on and feel like you got all the hits.
Dude, had I stuck with it in 2012 when I started, I think it was no 2010, 2011 is when we started it. We called it Comic Center. Like we really wanted to be Sports Center for
I love
comics.
that.
I think that there's an alternate timeline where the two of us became on our own channel. I think that's very
Absolutely.
All right, so that's let's deal with there's a whole lot you just did. I want to double tap on. I think some of it will come back to later, but where during that period are you? Well, I guess that training sticks with you. Where do you think the content creators of right now? Where should they be, whether they're live selling or not? Whether they're just putting on a mic or writing, which is so rare these days. But where do you think that their focus should be for adding that value?
Right now? I think the first thing is actually a subtraction. Stop talking about each other. A lot of the content creators today spend a lot of time talking about each other.
Hallelujah. Amen.
That does not grow a new audience. You're also you have to be able to resonate with that content. You have to like be so deep into it that you're speaking to such a core niche audience that you already have. So there's no way to grow that audience. But you really think about the content that you're putting out and like who is it servicing? Who is your intended audience in your ideal world? I think a lot of content creators are making content that it gets them excited, but is it, and they may have like a core audience, but we see leveling off in comics that we don't see in other categories. There are content creators that have a much larger size. In comics, once you start hitting large scale content creators, you start to see the content creator step back. The content creator isn't in front of the camera anymore, and it's very like narrative based and more like general fandom. You start to see content that's more like here's your your movie highlights and things like that. The true like comic collector content, there's so many levels, so much green space in this area that I still get excited really about it. But I do think that content creators need to ask themselves, who is my audience? Who am I servicing? Who is getting value from what I'm watching? And if it's the end collector, then you want to shape that content towards that end collector. If it's the retailer, then you want to shape it towards the retailer. Like I said, we realized at some point we were like, the people who are watching us are not necessarily like the core casual fan, but the industry is watching us. So we
Yeah,
want to make content for the industry, and that was our goal. What's your niche? Um, I believe in abundance. There's enough space for everybody, but like
sure.
find your lane. What is your lane? Who are you speaking to? And I think like certainly what you're doing right now. Not to continue to put you on the pedestal, but I will. What you're doing now
Fluff
is
me.
it's a prime example. It's a prime example though. It doesn't exist if you don't do it. It's not. No one's doing it.
Yeah,
And I would also really tell content creators, don't look at the views in the early stages of a new content concept.
yeah.
When you first launch something, um, I think the views you're doing on this show now will be nothing like what you will do 3 years from now. But you have to build that momentum. You have to build that consistency. The viewer has to know that they can tune into you on a weekly basis and see something. So if you're not keeping that consistency, you're not gonna grow it. But people Gary, it's another Gary V thing, but like people don't have the patience to wait for that content to really snowball and take off. So if you believe in something and you have conviction and you believe there's an audience for it and you've identified that audience segment, then you have to go all in and you have to commit to it and understand that this is like, you're not looking at like, oh, I'm going to give it a couple weeks and see what happens. Now you got to give it a 12-month runway and really give it your all.
And show up, right? Show up at the same
Yes,
time every week for that 12 months. I mean,
absolutely.
it's a big commitment, but I know that I told my team, and I think I've said it on here, like so long as we hit 200 subscribers in the first year, this will be a success. Because for me, the whole point was the conversations more than anything else. Just the platform was an excuse for the conversations,
Right.
and it had an immediate impact on our business, and it has been, like I said earlier, I've said it's been the spine of the business. But I will say that our content, I know, is very niche, right? I never
Right.
expect even 5 figures on our subscribers. Our downloads and our interactions, I cannot imagine ever being more than a couple thousand. But I'm curious to hear what you're saying about how comics people are kind of leveling off, and then it's sort of driving towards that sort of uh, focus on movies and comics based movies and that sort of thing. What do you if I am understanding you correctly, it feels like you're saying that we have a headspace for comics content that nobody's achieving, right? That there
Yes.
is more there based on what you're seeing in other fandoms because you guys work in so many. It feels like you're saying that. Can you, if that's true, can you dig more into that?
Yeah, and I think there's like a specific kind of like content delivery way that no one in comics is doing, where you start to see the kind of living in that space. And that is really like experiential. So many people, we talked about like the life of a retailer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like whether it's the day to day, every day of opening up your shop, whether it's the grind of going on the road and doing these conventions. I would have never known what that experience was like
Mm.
until I did it. But
Mm.
we don't have in the comic space people who are doing this kind of vlog style, follow my journey content. I look back and think when you talk about
Mm.
content that we wish could have had, I look back and go, man, if I would have filmed my entire journey
Yeah.
from the very first day of like sending DMs to now where I'm getting to do some of the coolest things that you could ever imagine, it's like there's so much content gold within that.
Yeah.
Even the failures, even the times that things don't work and you fall on your face and you take like real learnings from it. It's like uh, there's an entire audience that wants to see it. So I even talk to like the big content creators in comics, and I'm always kind of encouraging them of like, I still think there's more people want to see what you're doing. I look at when I'm at a convention and I'm watching the comic toms. I'm like, whether the hustle that he puts in
Oh
to
yeah.
content creation on the floor, to taking those meetings, but then also live selling, to fan interaction. He will stop and talk to every fan that wants to talk to him, take pictures with every fan that wants to take pictures with him. the way that he is going about his time at a convention is, for me, is really fascinating to see. And I've
Yeah.
encouraged him. I think like people want to see that, but that involves content. A lot of our content creators, we're all doing it ourselves. I was doing
Yeah.
it in my, in my bedroom. And that's different than like starting to bring in a videographer, starting to bring in, an outside editor. These are things that not we our content creators haven't necessarily seen the value of investing in. And I think because you're not going to see it in the upfront, you're going to have to put that investment out with a belief that it's going to
Yeah.
it's going to get you somewhere, that and it's not always one to one. It doesn't mean you're going to generate YouTube revenue that then benefits you directly. To your point, this show has brought you in business that you can't see in the clicks.
No, you never would. There's no way. There's no. I mean,
Yeah,
I could go in and quantify. This is how much we made out of that client. This is, and it came from this particular podcast. I could
right.
take the whole. I could take all of the expenses of the podcast and deduct them from the revenue generated by those clients, and I know that that's like a huge ROI. And but I hear what you're saying, and I think that there's always more you can do, right? Like I see those I see those reels where there's wake up at 5:03 a.m., get
Yes,
my protein shake in, do my workout, do that. I think I have my routine, and one of the things I love about this content is occasionally I ask people, what is your routine? Tell me about that, because it is so hyper personal, but we also have similar things that we always hit. And it's those little tips about getting through the day, I think, that people really want to hear. But it's like it's a lot. Just running a business is a lot, Jack. It's like so now I'm the head of marketing, but I'm also the head of finance, and I'm also the head of HR, and I'm also the head of client relations. So how do you make time for that, man? I don't. It's a struggle. It's like you never is enough. Then I think that's part of the issue with a lot of people when they're hearing that is, when is it enough, and what should I not be doing when I do that? Because the opportunity cost is real, you know?
absolutely. Yeah, and I think if you're not bringing in outside help, if you're trying to take it all on yourself, you're going to kill yourself.
Yeah.
I think my biggest suggestion is there are a lot of people like me 10 years ago. I would have done it for free. I would have worked with somebody. There are people out there that want to get that experience, want to grow, want to learn. And I look at somebody like a veteran in our industry, whether it's Rups Comics or Jesse James, and
Yeah.
that I've been doing this for years. It's like there's got to be some young kid out there who would love nothing more than to like lean in for a few years with Rups. And
Yeah.
and I would say to anybody out there, if you're not, you're nuts. Like that's an opportunity. You're gonna learn more standing beside those guys than you will on your own. And so it's just finding that. But I do agree with you. I think it's tough. I mean, certainly we see that in live shopping. Like when you have something new like live shopping come in, the retailer's first reaction is, "Oh, this is another thing I have to do."
Yeah.
Like this is another thing you're adding to my list, which for any small business owner is daunting.
We are actually at the time in my head. I usually structure out where these conversations are going to go, and I do like to keep in the real, like some of the real juicy stuff. I like to keep later in the episode, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what I feel like we're hitting about the time signature where I wanted to talk about this. The dog just opened the door for no reason at all, and then walked out. It was really very rude. Anyway, let's talk about live selling, because you've been
Yeah.
a working retailer in that you were a convention retailer, you were a content
Yep.
creating retailer. You've worked now with you've mentioned during this call, I think, 6 different working retailers in one form or another. If you are talking to somebody like a Shelton Drum or a Jesse or a Chris Rups, right? People who are have established businesses, have been at this for 20, 30 years, and you're trying to convince them that live selling is a vertical that they need to pay attention to. What is the pitch for what am I not doing instead? Right? Why is this of so much value that I need to stop what I'm doing that has been working to do this?
Yeah, and I think so. I think the first thing is I don't want any retailer to stop what they're doing. I want them to find a way to integrate this into what they're doing in a way in which feels additive and isn't something that's taking away from their business. Their core businesses are always going to be the main function of what they do. But when you look at somebody like a Sheldon, I look at somebody who so formative on so many like young men and women's lives in the Charlotte area. The
Yeah.
amount of people, like the experience when you talk about a comic shop done right, like what a job they've done over the last 40 plus years of like creating an environment where young kids could and adults could go in and like nerd out and feel comfortable and talk to like you want to talk about an experienced staff. I mean, like look at the people in the industry who came up working in that store, from Jason Latour to Matt Fraction. Like real names have like worked the shelves in that shop. It's an iconic
Yeah.
place. And I've had this conversation with them because I think they're very much a business that's like, we do our thing. We don't have a need to do something new.
Just to add on
Yeah.
to Heroes Aren't Hard to Find, Charlotte, South Carolina, incredible space, but they also run an incredible show. If you are a
Yes.
publisher and you're not going to Heroes every year, you are not recruiting the up and coming talent, because that's where they're displaying. Shelton and his team do an amazing job of bringing both talent in from the more established talent, but also like brand new people. That's where they break, and you get an opportunity to see them as they break. And I will say, having been in his shop, you would think a place that has been around for decades like that would be like really kind of set in its ways and kind of settling in under its own weight, and a little bit, I
Yeah.
don't know, we've all been in that place that just feels heavy with the years that have been in there. There's something about that space that just feels light, and is well
Yes.
lit, and it's well designed, and it's well stocked, and the people there know their shit. And yeah, I cannot. All right. Anyway, so you've already spoken to them about, how do they, this is an important piece.
Yeah. So for somebody like them, what they've been able to cultivate locally is this community experience where like people in their neighborhood have never had to worry about finding a comic shop.
True.
But as somebody who lives in South Carolina, there are areas of my state that are like comic book deserts, where there either isn't a shop, or the shop in your area, they don't have really a new comic book day wall. They're pull list only. They're back issue only. There's not every, we take for granted how that it's that easy for everyone just to find
True.
an amazing comic shop. And I think for those of us who maybe live on one of the coasts, or were blessed enough to grow up right down the street from Heroes Aren't Hard to Find, you can take for granted that everyone's experience isn't that. And so,
Yeah.
what I always say to those retailers is, all I'm looking to do is expand your neighborhood. You're already servicing your neighborhood. I just want to make your neighborhood bigger, because there's somebody in South Dakota, there's somebody in, rural Iowa that does not have access to a comic book shop, that is missing out on all of these amazing things that we're describing that you get to experience when you walk into Heroes Aren't Hard to Find. And live shopping, when it first launched, we think of it in terms of QVC, right? One to one product selling. But the reality is it's so much more. We have shop owners who are really communicating with their chats the same way they would their shop owners who are turning their camera on and they're live all day while they're in the shop. And we've seen some of these like legacy shops, Midtown Comics, Mile High Comics, Rups Comics, begin to make the transition into live shopping because of just that. It's like, how cool is it now that you can buy from Mile High without ever making that trip out to Colorado, or using
Yeah.
like a static website, which doesn't give you the same experience as like talking to somebody and buying a piece of, at this point, something that comes out of Mile High is a piece of history for a comic book
Yeah.
fan.
So you're seeing retailers keeping the camera on all day? What does that look like? Are they carrying it around with them? Like, what? I would love to hear more about that.
So there's a variety of approaches. Certain retailers that are really bought in. They're building dedicated streaming areas within their shops, usually in the stock room. They're bringing on an employee who's managing that schedule separate. I think, like, to your point, retail owners do a lot, from
Yeah.
ordering to staffing to all the back end paperwork and marketing that goes into your shop. Being in front of a camera for a lot of owners on a consistent basis becomes tough. Um,
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're utilizing live shopping as an extension of their store. So in off hours, after hours, things like that, to be able to present what they do every day at their shop to the masses. But there's other owners who want to create that almost like shop with me. I want you to come to my store experience. Now, it's not the greatest shopping experience when you're not as like you're trying to talk to a customer in store and you're also trying to talk to a customer online,
Yeah.
so it doesn't necessarily retain the same level of viewership that you'll see if, with somebody who's like really locked in and engaged with their chat. But we've seen that kind of element. We've seen content that's like very scheduled, similar to YouTube shows, where it's like I have my set times. I know I'm going live, every day for New Comic Book Day at 10 a.m. and I'm doing, my Saturday night show and my Friday night show, and that's my schedule of content. But the great thing about live shopping is are literally shows going on 24/7. So regardless of what your working structure, your staffing situation might be, live selling works around you. You can find an audience that is ready to shop with you no matter what time it is. Uh, when it's convenient for you. So I encourage sellers to like, before you put that barrier up of like I can't take anything on, find what is the path to least resistance and give it a try, because what most sellers are finding once they really adapt to live shopping is it's actually taking things off your plate. It's taking a lot of stress off your plate, because what I found when I found Whatnot, I got brought in as a content creator. So I got brought in as like somebody to like test the app in the early stage when comics was launching. It took me one live stream. I did what every seller does. I didn't bring my good stuff. I was skeptical. I was like, what is this? I did my first show and I sat back and I was like, in 45 minutes, I did a week's worth of eBay sales. And just from static listings. And I was like, oh man, what if I like really leaned into this? What would that look like? And for a lot of retail shops that are just like every month trying to just make ends meet, uh, to leave your community outside your door is only so big, but on the internet it is just vast. We have a country full of starving comic book buyers that want to find your shop.
Okay, so let's say the tired retailer
Yes.
I'm hearing this and I'm like, okay, I'm really sick of eBay. I'd love to do this in 45 minutes and I'd love to be able to talk through it. It is interesting that you're I just heard myself say something and I want to digress a little bit. It is interesting that we're entering a phase where we talk to our computers and we talk to others through our computer rather than like having to use it as a mediator. I find that really interesting what you're doing is you're taking that conversation to the fan who's buying from their couch, and you're removing the barrier of I have to take a really good photo of this. I have to do the proper write up. I'm going to have to deal with you on and on and on about the details of this, and just making it a personal interaction again. I think that's really interesting.
No, absolutely. And I think just to expound on that, like that's the goal, right? Is like with this live shopping, shoppertainment kind of trend that you're seeing, is you're really trying to like mimic the exact function that you're doing in your shop, just utilizing a phone essentially as your middleman to be able to connect you with an audience. So we'll have live
Right.
sellers sometimes will be like, man, I had a rough show. I only had 20 people in my show. And I'll say to them, could you imagine if you were standing in your store and you had 20 people? How good would you feel?
Yep.
So like it really kind of like sets in when you're talking about brick and mortar retail and like trying to bring your every day, your job is just trying to bring people in the door. So I look at it just as another tool to be able to bring people into your door, whether it's virtually or your physical one.
So I'm a retailer, been at this for a while. I'm already tired before I even
Yes.
open the, I'm that 50-year-old guy who is opening the store for the 10,000th time, and I'm seeing this as an opportunity. What are my first steps? Like, what are the big, obviously I'm going to go to Whatnot and fill out some sort of form or something, but like, what does that look like for me?
Sure. Yeah. So you're going to fill out a form, and you're going to go through the onboarding process, which is going to walk you through all the things you need to understand your initial live stream, what your first live is going to be like. You can, and a lot of sellers are really nervous. I think that that's the biggest barrier that a lot of people don't want to talk about. And it's like kind of the elephant in the room, but I can tell you as somebody who has worked with celebrities from film and television who they get scared right before they go live on whatnot too for the first time. It is a totally normal thing. If you've never done live shopping, it is a new muscle to build in your body to do exactly what we're saying. You're having a conversation with your chat, but you're really just talking to yourself in a room.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's that whole thing, and you're putting yourself out there a little bit, which is, I think, for a lot of retailers can be nerve wracking. But the reality is, you're doing that in your shop every day, and again, it's just an
Yeah.
extension of that. Being able to go live, I think, finding that time where you're like, okay, I've walked through the onboarding process. You can do a private show. So you can do a show that doesn't have any viewers, practice all of those different. How do I run an auction? How do I run a giveaway? You can run a private show and only send like your three buddies the links. So your three buddies are in there giving you feedback.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's like an underutilized tool where it's like feel really confident before you go live. Also understand that similar to when you launch a YouTube channel, you do the first episode, like you're not going to get the viewership you want. You're not going to be as
Oof.
good as you want to be.
Yeah.
Understand that that's the journey you're taking when you jump into live shopping. You weren't the retailer you are today the day you opened your doors. So, like, understanding that, like, you're going to learn throughout this process. So, taking that view of, like, no, you don't want to just bring the junky stuff like I did for your first show. Uh, but at the same point, you want to understand that you're investing in building this sales stream, building this audience. And an audience is going to find you live shopping the same way they're going to do it, on YouTube or content creation. It's like you want to be consistent. You want to schedule shows for similar times. If you need to start only a few times a week, that's fine. If you want to start once a week, that's fine. Like whatever it is that gets you in the door, but pick some consistent times where viewers can find you. It's similar to like watching something on TV. If you don't know what time the show comes on, you can't find it.
Yeah.
So building that consistency with that viewer, and then kind of expanding as you kind of feel comfortable and are able to grow. And I think most sellers, once they get their feet underneath them, they immediately see what the potential is, and then their minds explode with like how I can integrate this into my business more. How can I make this a part of my new comic book day? How can I make this a part of my exclusive variant offerings? And whatnot has been able to do for like the live drop. And so much of like that business was very pre-order oriented, and then once the
Hmm.
books came in, they kind of like were an afterthought. And now you've got this second beat where you can really create this drop experience similar to like what I experienced coming in the sneaker industry of like hype and excitement around the release of something, which is something that I think that like our industry needed. uh I think New Comic Book Day is one of the coolest things going. There's not another industry where you see this like this drive towards local retail on one given day, and where we're
Yeah.
all pilgrimaging that day. So taking that experience and then bringing that digital, I think, is so valuable. And I know shops are so busy on Wednesday and they're like, don't give me another Wednesday task. But
Yeah.
we are a Wednesday driven business. It just is what it is.
We are. The peak of your week is always going to be everybody else's, the hump of everybody's week, right? It's always
Absolutely.
going to be it. All right. I dig that a lot. Well, all right. So that you invoked a couple things that I wanted to dig into. I personally have not. You and I talked about the idea of me
Yes.
creating some content around the idea of building a channel. And I'm really curious about this. I don't know if you can see, I don't know if it's in the shot, but I have a big stack of short boxes of comps that I always keep thinking maybe that's where I'm gonna. I don't know. We'll see. Um,
Absolutely.
but so when I think about that, though, I really do think about how live selling has already affected our industry. Right, it has changed the product of our industry,
For
and
sure.
how it. We talked a bit about our friend Gary and his blind bags. They sold, I think the first issue of Be Friends, they sold something like 1,000 copies in 9 seconds. That's, I mean, and then immediately they're like, why didn't we do 10? I mean, it just,
Right.
yeah, but who knows? Who knows where that's going? And I am really excited for them. But we now are seeing this sort of blind bag explosion in comics. And to my mind, seeing the whole board in the way that you and I try to me, this comes directly out of live selling, right?
For
There
sure.
is the blind bag movement that we're seeing right now doesn't happen if there isn't a live selling component. That sort of box breaking format that the card industry was doing before we did it. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I can't be the only one who saw that, right?
No, I mean, I think it's been one of the kind of like most fulfilling things that I've seen in my career is something that it was a goal of mine when I came to Whatnot. Previously, when I worked with publishers, I had pitched kind of this like trading card hybrid with comics. I think in my naive younger days of like trying to pitch these radical products at the direct market level,
Yeah.
um, not they don't want a lot to change. Obviously, like we've got a system, it works. Let's just stick with the system. So I was kind of unsuccessful. I think coming to work for Whatnot, I got this unique opportunity to approach the industry from an outside perspective and try to be additive. And Big Clutch is somebody who I worked with at Skybound and had kind of like laid the groundwork for this with some of the blind bags that he had done at conventions. But I wanted to take it to the next level. I wanted to really mimic both the chase of sports cards of like, could I hit this limited to 25? Can I hit this one of one? Like
Right.
these are concepts we don't have in comics. And the reason that is exciting is we don't have a reason for a buyer to buy multiples. We don't have a reason for, there's the one thing we have that nobody else has is the very tactical element of comics that you can read a comic and derive enjoyment from that. That's awesome. There's a utility there. But we don't have that thing that sports cards has that makes somebody go, yeah, I bought 100 boxes of tops
Right.
because I'm chasing this thing. So we didn't have that. Also, when live shopping gets created, you start noticing trends. Like how many books can a seller sell through in an hour? When you're just going one to one to one to one, what's the average order value, the AOV of those orders? And how do we grow that average order value? And these things were struggles because comics takes a little longer. It takes a little longer to explain. It takes a little longer to walk through condition. So it was like, how do we do something like I have them right here, like our Marvel comic trading packs where you're taking, 3 comics, you're packaging them in a professional packaging, you're releasing them in concert with the publisher, you're putting them in an outer box that now displays them the way, like, in my mind, comics should be displayed, like in all their glory, all the art. Um, and you're creating a product that now can be sold as a 9 comic box, as a 3 comic pack. It can be opened and books can be sold individually. It gives the retailer a lot of optionality, and it's also made for that live experience because now you're seeing the entertainment factor coming in of people watching these breaks. And even if I can't participate, I want to be there when someone pulls the God pack that has all of the rare variants in it. I want to be in there when someone pulls the one of one chase, and I want to be able to clip that moment and share it on social. And that was the goal of like, how do we bring fun into it,
Yeah.
and how do we create a selling environment that allows sellers to sell more in less time? And those two elements were the two kind of key factors. And then I very much believe in like the field of dreams approach of like, you've got to build it. You have to build it on faith.
Yeah.
um and like, you know shout out to the high level executives at Whatnot who have indulged my whims here with things like this and helped to make these things happen. But we were able to do it. We started with our X-Men 97 promotion. That was April 2024. We were actually late. We were supposed to be in like lockstep with the start of X-Men 97, some promotional stuff behind the scenes kind of slowed down that process. We were very late. I was a bit worried about it. But when we put the release out, I immediately saw signals that you have to resonate with you as a publisher,
Yeah.
in that we were outside the window of the television promotional cycle for this IP. But we were able to get over 500 sellers selling the same product on the same day. So for Marvel, like, wow, like what a signal boost. Everyone's talking X-Men 97 on this one day. And the fact that we were able to organize that and sellers were excited to participate in that was a real sign that, okay, we're on to something here.
Yeah.
Number one, for a publisher to partner with, if you're looking to engage an audience and create an eventized approach to releasing comics, this is a great tool to do it. Secondly, from platform perspective, we saw, okay, our sellers are into this concept. They thought this was cool. They had a great experience. For Whatnot, like we don't make profit on these products. So we're literally facilitating putting these products together. Our sellers are making all of the profit from it. And we're working directly in concert with Marvel. So like I never touch the books. Whatnot never touches the books. The books go straight from Marvel to a third party packaging facility, collates, puts the books together. So it's real transparent and above board. And we realized we could build on that experience. So after the first X-Men packs, we wanted to integrate the box. So now it went from just a single pack with a 3. It's like, how can you keep building on it? So we wanted to add in the box. So for New York Comic Con, we did this concept with Marvel called the Year of Marvel, where we highlighted the 5 best releases according to Marvel from 2024 in these all foil covers. And then we wanted to create increased rarities. So with the X-Men packs, like the rarest book was limited to 300. And we were like, how far can I push Marvel? And so they did a limited to 24 foil, red foil, Marvel red foil, limited to 24. And we immediately started to see like the Ultimate Spider-Man #1, which obviously was one of the hottest books from last year. The red foil limited to 24 was selling on the secondary market. Cover price was reporting around $1,600 raw. So we saw this. That's something that like you could buy a pack of these,
Yeah.
spend $100, open that pack, and you have the chance to immediately pull something out of 16x value. And that's something that is new to the comic space, and I think people got excited about doing that. And then going into this year, we tested a lot around IP, teaming up with the studio in concert with the releases of their films. So we did Captain America, we did Daredevil, and then we did Fantastic Four. And obviously, like a lot of that becomes dependent on the success of these films, which us in the comics industry have, even at like the Marvel DC level, have very little to do with what goes on the studio side.
How well they do. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, how well they do and how they market the films. But we've continued to have great success. Our numbers have grown with it as far as like participation, interest. Sellers are finding new and creative ways to continue to sell this. And then what we saw spin off the back of that was, when we had these initial conversations, our CEO is very like, very upfront about like, I don't want to be, we're a platform. Like it's our job to facilitate opportunity for sellers. We don't want to create I don't want to be like in the business of creating something and selling it.
Yeah.
But like we will create this and show what can be done with this, with the hopes that then it turns into something that the direct market adopts. So it's been really cool to see over the last couple months. First step was seeing retailers do their own version. So
Yeah.
now retailers are teaming up with publishers. At New York Comic Con, we've got Comic Exposure and Carnivore Comics, 2 retailers teaming up with IDW to release their own trading pack on Whatnot that they put together. Very high quality, very similar product. But they went and did it themselves. We saw, Big Clutch put his packs together, even on other platforms. It made me feel good to see the success that those packs had on the other platforms, because it meant that it wasn't something just native to Whatnot, that it was something that the entire industry seems to be excited about. And then publishers took note. I know doing this with Marvel firsthand, they saw it obviously very early in the process.
Right.
But now seeing like the DCKO blind bags, Dynamite leaning in their November solicits with 2 blind bags, what Keen Spot is doing with blind bags. I think it's a positive trend in the community, because we're seeing increased sales at the publisher level. We're seeing increased sales at the retailer level, and it's creating this shoppable entertainment now on these live streaming platforms, where when the Battle Beast direct market packs came out,
Oh,
we didn't
huge.
create we didn't create an event for it because we didn't anticipate how much the like retailers in the community were going to jump on that to that
Yeah.
degree. And
Yeah,
it was like it created an event in and of itself. And so
truly.
watching those trends going to San Diego this year, and as we talked about in the early, like seeing standing back and seeing the macro of everything and going, okay, in the toy industry, everything is going blind box. Everything is going in that direction. Everything is even like, you had Funko be a stalwart for years. And now Thrilljoy, a competitor, is releasing their figures, and the one difference is blind boxed.
Yeah.
So you're starting to see more and more companies transition that way. It's only right in comics that we see those similar trends. So I honestly expect to see more before it slows down.
All right, so I saw the same thing, and I want to tell you my favorite experience. I just got back from Anime NYC, and one of my favorite products I saw there. I wish I could remember the name of the brand, but it was this just like an illustration kind of apparel brand. I bought a hat that I loved. My son also got a bucket hat that he loves. Um, but they one of my favorite things, it was all based around fish. It was kind of manga anime all inspired, and they had little blind boxes that were not boxes, they were tins like you would open sardines,
Yeah.
and that's what the little keychain came in. That experience of, I'm going to buy this thing, even though I'm getting a keychain, I'm spending $20 for this keychain, but I'm buying the experience of opening it. I think that just drove home to me that all of this blind box stuff is not so much about the ownership of the item, but the moment of interaction with and surprise with the product.
Yeah, that surprise and delight. That surprise and
Yeah.
delight moment of like, and that what could be.
Yeah.
That moment of anticipation. It is what makes, I think, why I enjoyed sports card collecting when I was younger, and it's fun to be able to be a part of bringing that into this hobby in some capacity. It'll never replace like the way comics are sold. It'll always be an alternative, option.
Sure. Yeah, 100%. It's just going
But
to be an add-on to that. Right. Yeah.
yeah, but I think it could be a conduit to get comics in more places, to get comics. It's a unique packaging approach that
Yeah.
allows you to do more with comics.
All right, so I have this idea. I want to workshop an idea with you. Let's pretend that the record button is not on, okay? Because
Let's do it.
let's dig in. This is Adam and Jack. We're gonna break this idea. 2022. I went to my first Complex Con. It was an eye opening experience for seeing how, like, brands like I just talked about, how they present their wares in ways that I think comics can still be stealing from ideas from that culture. Um, I can tell you, I keep a couple things around my desk from a brand called Mischief, but this is the Peeps of Willendorf. They're one of my favorites. But I think that that whole culture has some things that we can steal from. But in 2022, I'm seeing people do box breaks for cards, and I'm seeing what a big deal it is. And to my mind, I didn't go where you went. Would have been much more successful if I had. However, to my mind, I've been working with smaller brands, smaller publishers, and all of them have the same problem, which is they have this backstock of inventory that has to either be clearanced out or destroyed or donated or something. And so my pitch to my clients at that time was, you have this deep inventory of backstock. Let's create some new product, some new chase items, and let's do blind bags of 3 to 5 comics of commons, meaning the stuff that's in your inventory, and then the new product, the new chase items. And my theory here was, I'm also going to give them, I was thinking back on the old like checklists for trading cards. I was also going to give the fans a checklist of, here's everything that we've done. You could go through and collect them all. Does this work? Am I deluding myself that fans would care about at all about this, like, 5-10 year old single issue comic that nobody's buying right now? Or is it like, do you really have to create new product for these blind bags?
So I think it's very different depending on who you are. Us as a platform, I think we're pigeonholed in that stance of like, we have mystery box policies, and I don't want anything that we come out with ever to have. So like, for instance, just to be very transparent, like
Please.
big clutches blind bags, they're a very different product than like the Marvel packs that I've worked on. The Marvel packs, that's all new to market products. But I actually think the reason why there's a market for what you're talking about is what like Big Clutch did, where in his packs there were older Invincible back issues
Right.
within those packs. For our packs to be within whatnot policy coming directly from the platform, it needs to be all new to market product, and it really needs to not come from whatnot. It needs to come from Marvel. So it's like a fine line that I'm playing there. Um, but so it's a little bit of a different experience. But I think for like retailers who are and publishers who are looking at this, you know, it was told to me early on. Ross Ritchie said, it's something that stuck with me. Like your backstock is one of your greatest assets. I think most people look at it as like this detriment of like I've got all this inventory. When in reality, when times are lean, that backstock can
Oh,
be
sure.
what saves you.
Yeah.
But to your point, you've got to find unique ways to release it. And so where I like this experience is there's several different ways that this blind bag process can be used, whether it's releasing new product and just as a distribution method that can either create multiple item sales or where you can bundle 3 items in a singular pack, but also as this avenue to release this older product in a way that's more exciting, especially if you couple it with those chase items. I think that's the key. If you were just releasing the older items repackaged,
Yeah.
it probably doesn't hit as much as if you've then got this newer item, or the chase items can be unique. Like, can we get creator signatures involved? Can we do one of one sketches, original art? Like, sky's the limit, really, what can be put into these. I've been telling publishers and retailers, like, we're going to get to a point where people are going to put experiences into this,
Yes.
where it's like more than just, you can win a direct comic, but like, you know, someone like Marvel can easily do, come on the set of this movie or come to the premiere of this movie. And then that's a once in a lifetime fan
Sure.
experience. And I think every publisher, you've got your core fans. You can figure out what that fan experience, what would really get them excited, and include those as rarities and chases. But I think the exciting part is we're still so early stages on this. There's so much room for experimentation and pushing the needle in different directions. I would also encourage people, don't just look at what's been done. Don't just look at what I've done. Don't just look at what Clutch has done. I think there's like a million different ways to skin the cat and to
Yeah.
approach this. And I think we're at the very early stages of like what this like surprise release mechanism could be.
It occurs to me that a lot of the rules that we as a company set up around the crowdfunding campaigns that we do, like simple things like that, there needs to be a low end, there needs to be something that has people interested, there needs to be, there needs to be stuff of value that you're never going to see again. It needs a little bit of FOMO, but you do need that sort of high end experience. It occurs to me that what you're talking about really kind of is all those ideas, but it's packaged into evenly priced units, right? So
Yes.
you're averaging out the cost of all of that into those units. It's really interesting from just a marketing packaging standpoint, a way that we can reuse some of the ideas that we're seeing everywhere. That's wonderful. I love it. Jack, I'm all for it, man. Anytime we come up with something new to get people excited about the experience of comics, I think is a net positive for everybody, and I think you should be commended for your championing of this new thing. What are the stuff? Can you talk about what you see after that? Like after the blind bag, what is the look like? What does live selling look like? What does retail set look like? What does fandom look like for our space in the next, let's say, 5 years from now?
Yeah, I think live shopping is going to continue to expand. I think it's going to expand beyond your phone onto your television. I think we're going to continue to see people are really consuming this at high rates. And I think similar to the way people have transitioned to watching like YouTube on your phone or your computer to now so much of us are watching it on our televisions. I think you're going to start seeing a lot of that. With that, you're going to begin to see like the leveling up of the streaming process. Who's going to be the first ones to like really build out studios? We've
Mm,
already seen even brands pay attention to specific streamers and sponsor streamers. So now we've got like streamers with like G Fuel sponsorships and things like that, where you're going to start seeing individual channels become destinations beyond just like what is Whatnot or eBay Live or Fanatics or any of these other places. Like you're gonna see these specific channels become the destination, the way like Mr. Beast is in a way like bigger than YouTube, right? It's like he's platform agnostic. He's become this just monster. You're going to start to see people elevate to that. I also think brands are the big one. We're starting to take notice with. We just launched last week with IDW. They're doing a weekly show now on Saturdays. I think brands are starting to look at it like um, this is an opportunity for them to not just go directly to consumer. That's immediately what we think, right? D2C, and we think, okay, is that at the detriment of the direct market? But it's also an opportunity to directly communicate with the most engaged fans.
Yeah.
This, I think live shop again, like live shopping when it first launches, it's very QVC, right? It's very one to one. Here's that item, move to the next. But it can be so much more. I think about the panels you used to put on in Valiant. Like imagine if you were giving that panel and it was a live stream, and as you're talking about Bloodshot and you're getting excited and you're getting me excited, what if I could immediately go buy something? Like, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing that's missing, I think, from that panel experience is you get people so engaged and so excited, but you don't have an immediate CTA for them. They have to then go back and order those books at their comic shops. If there was that immediate transaction point, now you're bringing people in, and it's all about getting fans in the door. How can we be more accessible? So the comic packs, my hope are they bring in an audience that maybe wouldn't have paid attention to comics. If we can bring in just a slice of that Pokemon audience, like that's a win.
Oh yeah.
Um, if we can win that battle for like their attention, I think that's great. If it gets comics in the hands of, just one more person, I think in the same thing in terms of live shopping of like the more that we can work with the Todd McFarlanes and the IDWs and the Marvels, the more it sends a strong signal boost to Joe retailer, in their small town that like, look, this isn't a fad. This isn't just another internet trend. This is a real avenue for commerce. It's very similar to, and I think this is taking a little bit from our friend Gary Vaynerchuk again, but it's a little bit of like early, web days where it's like you were debating whether you needed a website or not. And now we know, like, if you want anyone to be able to find you, you have to have that website. I think it's
Yeah.
very similar of like, it's early days. But I think that's another thing is sometimes people feel like, oh man, I wish I would have gotten on live shopping 3 years ago. There's so many more sellers on right now. It is still so day one.
Yeah.
It is so day one of what it's going to be. That I don't think anybody should feel any trepidation about joining now or feeling like they're behind the eight ball. You are if you join tomorrow, you are early. You are a pioneer.
Well, as somebody who started a podcast in 2024, I can tell you that it is still, the best time to start is today, and the second best time is tomorrow. So
Absolutely.
maybe live selling is the next Prana. I don't know. I feel very comfortable in my B2B world, but we'll see if we jump into that.
I see you more in the future facilitating your B2B partners, building out their live streaming
True.
avenues of their business as I think you will soon I'm determined to make you an advocate for live shopping one way or another.
Well, maybe that'll be our next, because we do have an entire arm of our company now that is doing crowdfunding. Maybe that's our next edition. All right, now we're talking. All right, yeah. For those of you who are eventually sign on to our live selling service, this is where it was born. We've been at this for a while, and I know that we both have pretty busy days ahead of us. What have we not covered? What parts of Jack are we missing?
I think we've covered so much. I think we've touched on a lot. I think the biggest thing is like the thing that I always try to get out there is like I am from the community.
Yeah.
So I think I feel very blessed that while I hold a marketing role at a tech company that's certainly exploding, that I very much and the company very much values the fact that I am rooted in the community. I hear everything, I watch everything, I watch all the content. I try to stay as boots on the ground as possible. I'm a father of four daughters that certainly, yeah, certainly inform um, my decision making, and I just want to leave comics in a better spot, than when I got into it. And I really want to make it a place. I have daughters who want to do this one day.
Yeah.
And I really just want to continue to make this a place where, young women and can feel, and people who feel marginalized can feel like there is an opportunity here where like I was kind of coming into this, like, how do you get in? That's
Yeah.
why I appreciate places like this where there are these avenues for those who are trying to find their way in this crazy world of like childhood wonders turned commerce, to figure out how to navigate that path. And then as far as like coming down the pipeline, we talked a little bit earlier about the planning, the lead up to an IRL. I am deep in the planning for New York Comic Con.
Oh,
So
sure.
I definitely want to invite everybody. Booth 1000, the
1000.
old Funko spot, first spot directly on the left. Whatnot will be showing up in style. We are putting a literal house on the convention floor. So I can't wait for everybody to come by and see the really
Oh.
cool experience that we've got. You'll be able to buy exclusives that our sellers are producing directly from the booth, as well as see amazing live streams from some of your favorite people, like Gary Vaynerchuk and the V Friends crew.
Yeah, I know they have a big New York Comic Con plan. We've been talking with them about some of the stuff we've been building, and some of the creators that we've been working with them are going to be there as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what you bring to that, a house. I love that you're going to be building a house. Um, this has been really a joy. Jack, where should people find you if there's a retailer right now who's watched this and said, fine, I'll try it? Give us the actual details. Where do they go, and where do they find you to learn more about what the stuff that you're doing?
Absolutely. All they have to do is go to whatnot.com and sign up to sell right on the homepage. But please, if you're in the industry, reach out. AKA underscore Mr. on Instagram, Jack.DeMayo at whatnot.com. I want to be an advocate for you. I want to help make this process as smooth as possible. Certainly onboarding isn't my core job, but if
Sure.
there's somebody in this industry that wants to be a part of this and wants to get in on this, I want to try to make that as frictionless as possible and be a resource to all of our sellers.
Dude, this has been a joy, and I'm telling you, have me thinking about what kind of service we can help build to transition people into that. Jack, this has been wonderful. My name is Adam Freeman. This has been Comic Industry Insiders, and I will say that I'm told more often than not that I don't berate you for not subscribing. I don't care if you subscribe, just show up. And if you want to leave something in the comments, I know that Jack will read it because that's who he is.
That's right.
So we definitely want to hear from you. What is the pieces that you're taking away from this? Where have we been wrong? We would love to hear from you. Jack, this has been wonderful, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Namaste, y'all. See you in a week.